Our final guest this evening is DJ turned author and activist Mark Devlin. Mark had a long and successful career in the music industry before realising it wasn't what it seemed. He started researching the entertainment world, and the result of his investigations became 3 volumes of work on the real workings of the music industry, the latest of which, Musical Truth 3, was released just last month. He joins us now. Mark, welcome to Right Now. So you had a great career, you've travelled the world, you had your own radio show.
Yep.
What made you then turn around and start looking at the industry itself?
Well, around about 2007, 2008, I started to have some big questions about the true nature of the world.
Right.
Who really runs things, what this place really is. And your dad's books really helped because I got put onto those. And
Right.
I found that they answered many of the questions I previously had. It made sense of things. And I realised that the world is unfair and unjust and chaotic because it's designed to be like that. And it made me realise that all aspects of organised society are controlled by the same forces.
Right.
And I realised that the industry of which I'd been a part as a DJ, the music industry, was a key component in that process. And so I wanted to understand exactly how this industry had been used to mind control the masses, to push social engineering agendas,
Right.
and to influence society. So I threw myself into that nature of research, and the result was the trilogy of Musical Truth books that I put out beginning in 2016. And I've put in many years now of doing public talks and interviews and live presentations presenting this information.
What did you find in terms of what particular artists were involved? Were there any that you focused on? And also the question I always think of is are they aware that they're doing it? Some of them, do you think?
Well, I came to realise that any household name A-list artist that everyone's heard of. So if you go into the high street and you stop someone and you say, have you heard of this musician? And they say, of course I have.
Right.
Then they would have been placed there. They would have had their career facilitated for them by those that can make this sort of thing happen. So the really big names were of interest to me.
Right.
One group that I really focused on was the Beatles, arguably the most successful and influential group of all times. And also the Rolling Stones, who were pitted as their rivals, although in fact that was a dialectic, and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were put out there by the same forces to appeal to different demographics.
Right.
And just the really big names like Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, The Doors, these kind of groups, The Who, are very interesting to look into. David Bowie, Elton John, these kind of names.
Right.
As to whether they would be aware of what they're a part of, I would say absolutely.
Really?
I think some of them come into the industry by way of their family backgrounds. A lot of it is down to bloodlines, very important in this story.
Right.
So many of these musicians get elevated into these positions because of the family that they come from. Then there are others who are chosen and selected for success because they've shown themselves to be so hungry for the fame and fortune that they're literally willing to do anything for it.
They'll sell their soul, basically.
But they will be aware of this. They will know that they're a part of the industry machine.
Right.
And I think we've seen evidence of this over the past 2 years, just through the sheer lack of famous musicians that have spoken out about what's so obvious in terms of tyranny and human enslavement.
Yeah.
Virtually none of them have said anything because they know that they can't, because they know there would be a heavy price to pay for speaking out.
That's something that kind of was a surprise to me early doors, was the fact that you've got these so-called rebel rock stars who say nothing, and it's footballers generally who are perceived to be, you know, idiots that kick a ball around. They're the ones that have put 2 and 2 together, realised this is a scam and are speaking out about it. With the artists that you listed then, in terms that you'd focused on, obviously they're kind of basically around the 60s, aren't they? A lot of them.
Starting then,
Yeah. So do you reckon that's what the 60s was about, that whole revolution? You think that whole thing was orchestrated, basically?
Yeah. There's a lot of evidence to show that the whole counterculture scene coming in the mid to late 1960s was completely fabricated and orchestrated.
Right.
Or at the very least heavily infiltrated by the military intelligence services. So a lot of my work in volume 2 focuses on that era, and it shows the endless ties to the CIA in terms of many of the groups. And this is building on the work of Dave McGowan, who put out a great book called Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, where he's focusing on all the musicians that came out of the Laurel Canyon district of Los Angeles in the 60s.
Right.
And he's demonstrated in that book the endless family connections into the world of military intelligence through these prominent artists. And on top of that, you had the emergence of LSD, and you had all these other societal changes, different attitudes towards sex and family relationships, the emergence of the birth control pill, the feminist movement, and all of these things can be shown to have links back to the CIA and other social engineering think tanks. Right. So that entire scene was fabricated, in my view, and there's much evidence to back this up. And I think every other major trend or movement or scene that you've ever had that's influenced large groups of people can be shown to have come from these same sources. Nothing is organic, it turns out. Yeah. Nothing is grassroots. I wish it were, but all the evidence shows that all of these things have been fabricated.
That goes for so many things as well, doesn't it? Even when you think like Silicon Valley and stuff with, you know, all these huge corporations and things were just started by one guy in a garage. And it's like, yeah, I'm not sure it was.
Yeah, but do we believe Bill Gates invented Microsoft in his garage?
Well, there you go.
Or Mark Zuckerberg invented Facebook in his college dorm? It doesn't seem very likely, does it?
No, it doesn't seem likely at all. So in terms of Musical Truth 3, that's this one, this was out last month, is that right?
Just before Christmas.
Just before Christmas. So what are you focusing on this one? If with the second, obviously, you're looking a lot at that kind of that flower power movement and the orchestration behind that. What is this one particularly focusing on?
Well, it's the completion of the trilogy.
Right.
So I had in mind to write 3 books, and I'm probably going to cap the Musical Truth series here because I don't want to be writing Musical Truth Volume 72.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be moving on to some other things. So it does pick up on content from the first 2 books and continue that. But this is very much a book of these times. It's very topical. A lot of the content actually doesn't focus on music per se, but it talks about what we've all been through in the past 2 years. And I've broken down the entire COVID narrative and proven beyond any reasonable doubt that it's all fraudulent, as we well know.
Absolutely.
And I've presented so much evidence and so much documentary proof that this is the case. And I want this book to be used to a very large extent as a wake-up guide to the average normie.
Right.
What I want is for my regular readers to gift this book to family members, friends, colleagues, people who might not yet have twigged that there's something a bit wrong here.
Yeah.
And I hope that that book contains everything that anyone could need to shake them out of that mind-controlled trance and just get them to embrace the truth of this situation. There is a lot of music content in there as well. I've got a section called Sound Bites.
Right.
And it's short stories, or what I'm calling vignettes, which pick up on many of the points that I've made in the previous book. So it's reinforcing how so many of these musicians come from these important family backgrounds and these bloodlines.
Yeah.
It's reinforcing the mind control programming that goes on in the industry. It's looking at some of the dark occult symbolism and some of the rituals that take place in these stage shows.
Yeah.
So if anyone can get to the end of these 3 books and still believe that the music industry is organic and just happened to evolve randomly and there's nothing nefarious about it, I don't know what to tell you.
No, I think a lot of people are ready now, like you've said, in terms of people gifting that to, you know, so-called normies. I think most people now have twigged summits up. Not to the, you know, there's varying degrees of that, you know. I have conversations with friends of mine that were very, you know, branch Covidians early on that have now kind of twigged that something's not right. You know, they're not quite sure what it is. So hopefully then your book can explain more. Yeah. Do you think, so obviously you've been quite outspoken on the COVID narrative from the beginning. You're speaking at a Freedom Rally in Oxford
on Saturday.
This weekend, and so people know you for that. But do you think the reason you saw through the narrative is because you'd looked at the music industry? And so you're coming from a point of view of like, I know everything is not as it seems. You're not coming from a point of naivety, basically.
Yeah, well, sometimes I have to work really hard to get back into the kind of mindset that I was in when I was back in the Matrix in Normie Land, you know, because it's been so long.
Yeah.
But up until about 2007, I was firmly invested in the official version of everything. I mean, I actually bought the official version of 9/11. Imagine that. You know, when that event happened, I was watching the news and I thought that's how it went down. It wasn't until some years later that I actually did the research.
Yeah.
Something just caused me to get this thirst for truth around about that time. And I think about it in metaphysical, spiritual, contexts. And my view is that certain of us have been prepared for the roles that we now have.
100%.
And we had to go through a series of experiences and accumulate some life skills to set us up for our real work. So I was out there for all those years as a club and radio DJ, and I loved it, and I made quite a success of it, but that wasn't my real work.
No.
What I'm doing now is my real work. And there came a point, 2007, 2008, where I started having to prepare myself for what I'm doing now. And so I had to start doing the research. And yeah, having been a part of the industry certainly helped. I hadn't really seen anything from personal experience that made me realise the music industry was tainted or corrupted in any way. That only came through doing the research. But so many of us now are on our rightful path. We're doing what we came here to do. And we've had different roads that have led us here, but all those roads have converged and led to the same point.
100%.
And here we are.
I couldn't agree more. I think of times in my childhood, you know, growing up and then, you know, going into playing music and football and stuff. And when bad things would happen, you'd think to yourself, you know, why, not why me, because I'm not sort of that much of a negative person, but you would feel a bit kind of, and now you just think that was just your basic training.
That's right.
That's all that
That's
was,
right.
you know.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. What would do like your former, you know, I'd say colleagues, I don't know what the situation is if you're, would you be on tour with other DJs?
Well, I have been, yeah.
Yeah. So what's their kind of outlook on all of this?
Well, this is a source of great disappointment for me. You know, you made the point earlier on that rock music is supposed to be anti-establishment and rebellious and a bit dangerous.
Yeah.
And we've just not seen that the last couple of years. Where are all the punk rockers?
Great question.
Where are all the acid house ravers? Where's all the hip hop, radical heavy metal guys and drum and bass DJs and stuff? And even in the DJ community generally, there have been very few voices of dissent. There's been a couple, you know, Danny Rampling, props to him. He's been very outspoken.
Absolutely.
Slipmatt, Norris to Boss Windross, Norman Jay's said a few things, but other than them, you know, complete silence and complete compliance from so many of them.
Yeah.
And it's hugely disappointing to me. And I think this reinforces the idea that even the DJ community and the whole clubbing nightlife scene is controlled and directed to a very large extent by the same forces as the rest of the industry. So I don't really associate with former DJ friends, to be honest.
Right.
I've built up a whole new circle of friends, really good, solid, genuine friends, since I've started doing this work. I mean, I would count the number of good friends that I have as being in the hundreds now.
That's great.
And I couldn't have said that many years ago. So when you embark on this path, you lose a lot of people along the way. A lot of friends just
Disappear.
go.
Yeah.
But they get replaced by so many more people of a much more solid stature
Yeah.
that are really there for you. So I've got no regrets about any of it.
No, that's great. I think people get hung up on, you know, having almost lifelong friends when actually some people will just be there for a period of your life that they're meant to be there, and then they will go and do whatever else they need to do, and you carry on with your journey, and that's just...
Well, that's true. I mean, there was a kid in school who really got me into the sort of music that I played as a DJ. So I was known for playing black dance music in its various forms, primarily hip hop and rap and R&B, reggae, soulful house, that sort of thing. And back in the 80s when I was at school, that sort of stuff wasn't getting listened to.
No.
Where I grew up in West Oxfordshire, you know, it was very, very white and very conservative. So there was this one kid in my school that was into all the black music of the day, and he used to bring a radio cassette player in and play all this new music that he'd got. Most of the kids weren't interested, but it really sparked something in me. It sparked my interest. And I found that music so interesting and so fascinating that I embarked on my course as a DJ. And that was my career for the next 20 odd years. Now, I don't see that kid anymore. No. I don't associate with him at all. But he was there at that point in my life because he needed to be to get me into that music, which gave me my career, which gave me the familiarity and the profile for me to then come on and do this nature of work. So yeah, these people are there as sort of signposts along the way to guide us in the right direction.
Absolutely. And some, you know, are not necessarily nice things, but I always think it's kind of, you win some, you learn some. and everything that's happening is meant to happen for whatever reason.
That's right. I truly believe that.
Yeah. Right. Well, Musical Truth Volume 3 is out now. Where can we get that?
Well, it is on Amazon, you know, the
Needs must.
Antichrist.
Yeah.
But it's a convenient way for people to get hold of books, particularly overseas.
Yeah.
I can mail out signed copies, and I'm happy to do that to anyone that wants to get one from me direct. So all people have got to do is drop me an email. Shall I give my email address?
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
markdevlinuk@gmail.com, and then I can post these out anywhere. It is rather expensive to mail these out to the United States and Canada, so people might find it more convenient to get it on Amazon from those nations.
Yeah.
But anywhere else I can mail it out, you know, for a reasonable cost.
Magic.
And there's further information on my website at djmarkdevlin.com.
Fantastic. djmarkdevlin.com. Thanks for coming in, mate.
No
Appreciate
worries,
it.
mate. Yeah, good. Thanks.